Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Bucket Discussions podcast, the channel, man. Yo, whatever you want to call it, it is the man, J. Coop, back for another episode of J. Coop's Clips. And in this episode, man, we got to talk about a very unfortunate loss that my Los Angeles Clippers took last night to the Minnesota Timberwolves, the first seed in the Western Conference, matched up with the second seed in my Los Angeles Clippers. I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit of how this game went down, and also something that I saw from this game that could potentially be a Clippers weakness later down the line, especially, in the playoffs come April and May. So without further ado, man, let's get straight into it. So as I mentioned, man, my Los Angeles Clippers ended up going up against the Minnesota Timberwolves, the number one seed in the Western Conference last night. And before this game, man, both teams were sitting at 16 losses, so I was kind of a little optimistic about it, that maybe if we got this win, we could take the number one seed tonight and potentially take the number one seed going into the All-Star break, but that obviously was not the case, unfortunately. But yeah, man, like I said, it was a pretty entertaining game, though. You know what I'm saying? Outside of, just being a Clippers fan, it was a very entertaining game. You know what I'm saying? Just a lot of back and forth, a lot of, good plays on both ends. I'd say, especially for the Minnesota Timberwolves, they were playing lockdown defense pretty much this whole entire game, I'm not going to lie. But to start off this game, man, I really thought it was going to be a close game, even, by the final score, but I was wrong, man. The Clippers ended up losing this game by 21 points, 121 to 100. But, yeah, man, like I said, in the beginning, this game was a pretty close game. It ended up being 6-2 in the first couple minutes. James Harden had our first 5 points. He ended up catching us back up to put us only down by one, early in the first. But Russell Westbrook, man, this is something I noticed in the first quarter. When he came in, he automatically had an impact. He got to the rim, and he drew an and one, got the bucket, and went to the free throw line. And then the next play down, he also came down. I think he attacked Rudy Gobert, if I'm not mistaken, and then he went to the line. So he was automatically coming in and making an impact for us, just getting to the rim, making things happen, because I ain't gonna lie, a lot of things were not happening in this game, man. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, James Harden, they all, had their fair share of struggles in this game, I'm not gonna lie, and that is credit to the Minnesota Timberwolves defense, man. You already know they're the number one defense in the league, so they were gonna come into this game with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and that's exactly what they did from the start, I'm not gonna lie. But like I said, it was a pretty close game, at least in the first half. But the reason I think that was just because, like I said, the Timberwolves were playing really, really good defense, but the Clippers have, some of the best shot makers in the game. So that was, I feel like, the main reason we were staying in this game, was just because we had guys like Paul George, Kawhi, James Harden making shots. But yeah, man, I will say, Kawhi ended the first quarter with two big back-to-back dunks, you know what I'm saying? He came down on his first one. It was kind of right in front of Rudy Gobert. He was going up with his right, but he seen Karl Anthony Towns right there, and he kind of switched it to his left and threw it down. But then he had another one. I forgot how it kind of happened, but it was kind of the same way, where he just came down, running down the lane, and slammed it. So that was something you really like to see for Kawhi, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people have been speculating his athleticism the last couple years, just due to his knee surgeries and his reoccurring injuries. But Kawhi, man, he's really playing some of the best basketball of his career. And yeah, man, there's really not too much more I could say about Kawhi. But yeah, man, I will say the Clippers, we're still kind of struggling at this point. Like I said, I don't even remember if they had a lead early in the game, but I just know the game itself was pretty much neck and neck. But yeah, man, Clippers called a first timeout in the second quarter. After a big Monte Morris three. This was his first game with the Minnesota Timberwolves, you know what I'm saying? So that was something you like to see if you're a Wolves fan, man. Just your backup point guard that you just traded for, coming in and hitting a big shot against a big team, you know what I'm saying? So that was something you also like to see. But at that point, after he hit that three, the Timberwolves were up 43-33 in the second quarter. And yeah, man, it was not looking good at this point. But I will say the Clippers, came out of that timeout after that Monte Morris three and went on a 10-0 run to tie the game at 43 apiece. So that's something you really like to see. But like I said, man, it was pretty much a tale of two halves, man. The first half, the Clippers were keeping it really competitive. Like I just said, they just went on a 10-0 run after, being down 10 to tie the game. But they just didn't keep that same energy all night, you know what I'm saying? But right after that 10-0 run by the Los Angeles Clippers, the Minnesota Timberwolves ended up, scoring a little bit of themselves. They ended up scoring 6 points to put them up at 49 at that point. But then the Clippers went on a little bit of a run themselves to also be up at the half 53-49. So at this point I was pretty, not comfortable, but I was like, okay, so this is, the Clippers are finally stepping it up a little bit offensively. They're finally, starting to get a little bit of a rhythm, find their spots and do their thing. But, like I said, tell the two halves, man, coming out in this third quarter, they just looked super lackluster. Anthony Edwards had their first, 4 or 5 points coming out of the goddamn half. So I was just like, oh, great. Here we go again, just playing very lazy defense on one of the best perimeter players in the league in Anthony Edwards. So it just was not an ideal situation coming out of the half. But I will say at the halftime, though, man, Karl Anthony Towns was hooping, man. He had a pretty big first quarter. I think he had their first 6 points or something like that, but he ended up at the halftime, man, he had 14 points, 3 rebounds, and also 2 assists on 6 of 10 shooting. And Anthony Edwards was struggling at this point, but he later on he started to pick it up a little bit, but Anthony Edwards only had 6 points, 3 rebounds, and also 4 assists at the half. Rudy Gobert, man, I will say Rudy Gobert was, doing his job, doing his defensive player of the year things. As much as I don't like Rudy Gobert, I will give him credit where credit is due, man. He really does, just impact a defense, especially when he has decent perimeter players on this team. But Rudy Gobert, man, he had 6 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 blocks at the half. So there really wasn't too much more you could ask of a guy like Rudy Gobert at this point. But like I said, the Clippers, at the half, they didn't look that bad, man. The Clippers didn't look too bad at the half, but once the final score came out, their percentages, their field goal attempts, nothing really looked that great. But at the half, man, Kawhi ended up having 11 points, 4 rebounds, and he was also shooting 5 of 12 at this point, and he only shot 3 threes at this point and only made 1 of those. But Harden, man, to me, he was the player of the game at this point. At least he had 14 points, 2 rebounds, and also 3 assists on 4 of 9 shooting. He was also 2 of 5 from the 3. But PG, man, he was struggling. I will say that, man. There was a possession in the first quarter, I think it was, where he had Karl Anthony Towns on him out in the perimeter, and he was just having fun because it was his friend. You know what I'm saying? PG, he's normally the type to get a mismatch and drive by him, but at this point, man, he was just trying to, cross him up, you know what I'm saying? Maybe get a step back or something, but it just didn't end up working out. But at the half, Paul George had 9 points, 4 rebounds on 3 of 7 shooting and 1 of 4 from three-point land. So that's something you really don't like to see, you know what I'm saying? But at halftime, man, the Timberwolves were shooting 48% as a team compared to the 43% by the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Minnesota Timberwolves were struggling from the three-point land at 21%, and the Clippers were struggling themselves, but not that bad. They were at 36% from the 3 at the half, so yeah, man. But like I said, man, Anthony Edwards ended up coming out of halftime just lighting shit up, for the Minnesota Timberwolves, doing his thing. But like I said, man, the Minnesota Timberwolves coming out of halftime went on an 8-0 run to put themselves up 57-53 after the Clippers were just up 53-49. So, if you're a Timberwolves fan, that's something you really like to see, because, usually they'd be a little bit lackluster offensively, and they came out of halftime, man, just doing their thing. So they ended up doing what they were supposed to. But yeah, man, it just was not looking good. At the end of the third quarter, the Clippers ended up going down 89-72. And this is pretty much when the game just started to get out of reach, you know what I'm saying? Usually Kawhi Leonard plays the full third quarter, and he comes in around the 6 to 7 minute mark in the fourth quarter, but this was not the case this game, just due to the fact that it was such a blowout, you know what I'm saying? I was pretty disappointed, I'm not gonna lie, but like I said, end of the third, it was 89-72 at this point, and they just kept putting the beat down on this team, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, no Kawhi Leonard at this point, but the Timberwolves ended up going up by 20 around the 8 minute mark in the fourth quarter. It was 97-77, and this is when the Clippers pretty much just threw in the white towel. You know what I'm saying? They just didn't bring Kawhi Leonard back in, who usually does come in around this time. So, yeah, man, it just was not a good sign at this point. But like I said, man, the New Orleans Pelicans ended up just putting the clamps on in the second half and winning this game 121-100 points. So, yeah, man, it was not a very ideal game from the Los Angeles Clippers, man. Kawhi Leonard, he was struggling. He didn't have the best game. He had 18 points with 4 rebounds on 8 of 17 shooting and 1 of 3 from the three-point line. So when your best player kind of just doesn't perform to his normal standards, that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the team. As much as that sucks, but Yeah, man. Harden, he ended up having 17 points with 2 rebounds, 6 assists on 5 of 13 shooting, and also 3 of 8 from the three-point land. And Paul George, man, he was also struggling himself. He had 18 points on the game with 6 rebounds, 3 assists, but he shot 5 of 16 from the field and 2 of 8 from the three-point line. So that's something, man. This has been kind of a pattern in the last couple of games of me saying, man, you just don't want to see PG get into an early game slump where he shoots himself out of the game, because PG is known to do that. You know what I'm saying? He just kind of beats himself sometimes. He doesn't get to his spots and stuff like that, and that was the case for this game. But I will say that, like again, I said at the beginning of the video, man, that's credit to the Timberwolves defense, because they were putting the clamps down in this game. Even Russell Westbrook, who came in and made an impact in the first quarter, like I said earlier, man, he only finished the game with 11 points, the same amount of points he had at the half. He had 2 rebounds, 3 assists on 3 of 11 shooting, and also 1 of 5 from 3. So to put this into perspective, man, Russell Westbrook took the most amount of threes out of Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. Well, okay, excuse me. Besides Paul George, he took the most threes out of Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. So, and that was kind of the ideal situation that the Minnesota Timberwolves were trying to put the Clippers in, was have Russell Westbrook shoot those threes, and that's exactly what he did. You know what I'm saying? But Karl Anthony Towns, he had a really decent game, like I said, especially in the first half, this first quarter, man. He got him off to a pretty quick start, but he ended up finishing the game with 24 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists on 8 of 12 shooting. But he did kind of struggle from the three-point line. He was 1 of 5 from 3, but he did get one to fall. You know, it was a pretty, good timely 3. I believe he was in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken. Anthony Edwards, who actually did struggle this game, at least in the first half, ended up picking it up in the second half. Like I said earlier, man, he finished in the game with 23 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists on 8 of 18 shooting. And he also was just doing his thing, man. He was 1 of 11 from 3, though. 1 of 11 from 3. So that's something to keep an eye out on if you are a Timberwolves fan. You know what I'm saying? But other than that, man, Anthony Edwards had a very, very terrific game. Just a lot of timely shots. It's like every time, like the Clippers didn't end up making a run, but every time they were about to make a run, Anthony Edwards just came down, hit a crisscross, got by someone, just blew by them, man. I will say, man, Anthony Edwards was just blowing by our guys. And that could just be, due to their age, they just ain't as, defensively gifted at one point. But Anthony Edwards, who's one of the best perimeter players in the NBA, just blowing by these guys like nothing. That shit was kind of humiliating, I'm not going to lie. But Rudy Gobert had a big game this game. He had a double-double, 17 points, 10 rebounds, but he also had 4 blocks to go along with that stat line. So like I said, man, the Timberwolves defense is legit. If there's anything legit about this team, it is definitely their defense. So if you got any doubts about this team, I definitely would maybe change your mind. You know what I'm saying? Because this Timberwolves team, as much shit as I've given them, over the past couple years, they've definitely put it together this year, man. And they look like the best team in the Western Conference. I'm not going to lie. But, yeah, man, both teams, they came out and put up a fight, at least in the first half. Like I said, I feel like I got to keep reiterating that. But yeah, man, the second half, it was just a completely different game. Timberwolves just took over, did their thing, but the Timberwolves ended up shooting 54% from the field, 32% from the 3, and they also were 95% from the free throw line. So Rudy Gobert, man, he was really doing his thing. He was 5 of 5 from the free throw line himself, so he did exactly what he was supposed to. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, just a lot of defensive plays made by that man, and also Jaden McDaniels. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, bro, the Clippers were kind of lackluster this game, but I do expect it to bounce back. Like I said, man, the Timberwolves defense is no joke. So yeah, man, but the Clippers ended up shooting 40% from the field, 32% from the 3, and 88% from the free throw line. So it seemed like everyone was just missing a free throw here and there. Like Norman Powell, who's normally a very good free throw shooter, he was just struggling in general this game. I don't know if that had something to do with what happened last game where he got elbowed in the face, but yeah, hopefully you see a guy like Norman Powell step it up for the Clippers later on. But yeah, man, Timberwolves did their thing. You just have to give them the credit. You know what I'm saying? Like last year when they traded for Rudy Gobert, it looked like one of the worst trades in NBA history. But they routed the shit, man, this season, and they've been the number 1 seed for a good chunk of the NBA season. So you got to give them credit, man. But I'm expecting we play them 2 times again this year, so I'm expecting to at least hopefully beat them one of those games, you know what I'm saying? Because we can't just get swept by the Minnesota Timberwolves. That wouldn't be Clipper-like, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, man. But that pretty much does wrap up this game. Hopefully the Clippers come out tomorrow night and get a W against the Golden State Warriors before the All-Star break. That would be very, very lovely, you know what I'm saying? So hopefully they can do that for me. You know, don't have me going crazy over the All-Star break. So yeah, man, this pretty much does wrap up this episode of J. Coops Clips. Man, if you enjoyed this episode of J. Coops Clips or you found the information on any type of way, make sure you hit it with a thumbs up. Yeah, and if you're new around here, make sure you subscribe because I'm always dropping J. Coops Clips. So yeah, man, until next time, peace.
In the jungle like I'm Conan, kind of with both hands. Switch the flow like it was broken. I'm on the road, man, making plays just like DeRozan. I shoot my shot, and that shit wetter than the ocean. I brag a lot, but with the wind and come the boast in. I made a lot from them apartments that I sold, and he ain't make it up to college. So them streets where he enrolled in. I know I'm a scholar from the moments that I was exposed in.